अरे भाई साला आया हाथी लेकर अपना खेती का बर्बादी कर दिया।
अंग्रेज के ज़माना से 3 पीढ़ी हो गया खेती जोत रहा तो फारल लोग बोलते कि इसका अंदर का झाड़ को मत काटो बोलता है। तो हमने बोला कि वो झाड़ को हम नहीं काटेंगे, सिर्फ फसल निकालेंगे उसमें से। तो उसका वजह से वो सरकार अपने फारल वाले ने आके प्योर फाड़ दिया। प्योर फाड़ दिया तो हमने बोला भाई प्योर भी फाड़ेंगे तो हम वही ज़मीन के माथे पालेंगे, नहीं तो हम कैसा पालेंगे। तो हमको बोले कि नहीं, बोले तुम तारीख करो बोले। तो हमने बोला ठीक है भाई, तारीख भी शुरू है, तारीख शुरू है। तो हम भी गरीब के पास में पैसा कोई रहता नहीं ना कुछ नहीं, उसके वजह से हमने बहुत हाथ टेक दिया हमने। तो हमने बोला भाई कैसा भी करो हमारे को, लेकिन वो ज़मीन मिलने ज़रूर है हमारे को।
भैया मैंने अगर पट्टा मिल रहता था तो मेरे को कुछ सरकारी योजना मिलता था। हाँ, पट्टा नहीं से फारी वाले ने तारीख लगा दिया, मेरा तारीख करते करते मेरा।
This is a story of tribals in Melghat area of Amravati district, which is one of Project Tiger reserves, inhabited by Korkus and Gavlis who cultivate forest plots that are not theirs under the law. Deemed as encroachers, they face a constant threat of eviction and conviction and marginalized existence in these areas. They share their fate with millions of tribals across the country.
जंगल भी देता है।
बाप ज्यादा तो खेती कर रहा, अरे जमीन पे हक क्यों नहीं भाई।
फिर कुछ दिन के बाद में फारस घाट वाले ने अटक लगाया हमको कि भाई जमीन हमारी है, हम तुमको जोतने नहीं देंगे। फिर भी हम जोत रहे। फिर हमारे गांव के जो जोड़ी बैल नांगर बखर सेमाड़ो लेके गए इन लोगों ने। फिर फारस वाले ने क्या किया कि इन लोगों ऐसे मानते नहीं, फिर हत्ती लाए इन लोगों ने। हमारी जमीन फुल भरी थी अनाज से, हत्ती लाए, जानवर लाए, उन सब जानवर से हमारे जमीन के पूरा धान्य खिला दिया इन लोगों ने। हम रोते इतने बैठे, सब बाल बच्चा आदमी लोगों खेत के धुरे में।
A close look will reveal that it is these so-called primitive cultures, be it Africa or India, that have protected the forests in contrast to the greed and acquisitiveness of the advanced urban societies. And yet, what do we give in return? Threat of eviction, harassment, and a life of poverty for them. What was lacking was not the intent of the government. Numerous policy statements and the legal directives in Supreme Court case Pradeep Prabhu versus Maharashtra government directed the state to give opportunity to adduce claims and confer legal status. But the task remained incomplete for want of proper methodology that required unconventional and practical approach within the framework of the law and policy guidelines.
सरकार दुश्मनी छो जाए रखे, अल्ले डोंगर भी गोमोयो है, डो कुला भी गोमोयो है।
The Forest Conservation Act 1980 was a watershed in the history of forest tribal relations that prohibited non-forest use of forest land. But prior to 1980, numerous state guidelines provided for settlement of claims of tribals cultivating such areas subject to certain conditions. The Maharashtra state government resolution provided for regularization of claimants. Subsisting encroachment existing on March 1978 up to maximum 2 hectares belong to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, Vimukta Jati and Navbuddha or those below poverty line.
The Amravati administration had devised a 3-tier system: village committees, appeal committee at the taluka level and SDO committee at the district level on behalf of the collector. The salient features of this system were people's participation, a very transparent procedure, very proactive administration and proper training to the revenue and forest department personnel.
There was an attempt to resolve the issue of regularization of encroachment on forest land in 1978. Those encroachments were particularly for agricultural purpose. As the main stakeholders in the process were tribals and economically backward sections, they are illiterate, below poverty line and unorganized.
This issue was raised by the Commissioner for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes in his 29th report. And what he says is very poignant, that if the livelihood of a tribal living in the middle of the forest, living in nature and cultivating land in the forest is to be decided on the basis of whether a forest guard has made an entry in his primary offence register or not, if this is the only basis on which his whole future and the future of his family is going to depend, then we might as well condemn the majority of the tribal people to starvation and extinction. Using this in the writ petition which I argued in the Supreme Court on the point of what do you do with people who do not have documentary evidence, the Supreme Court passed an order that even in cases where a claim is not accompanied by documentary evidence, even there, in such cases, the inquiry officer should conduct a inquiry, accept evidence, and then come to accept or reject the claim.
सुनो 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 गांव वाले सुनो, अगले सोमवार 10 तारीख को अपने गांव में ग्राम सभा रखा है। वन जमीन पे जिनके खेत है उन्होंने और सारे गांव वाले ने उपस्थित रहना है। जिसके बाप दादा 25 बरस पहले से खेती कर रहे थे उन्होंने अर्जी देना है और साथ पास में कागजात होगा तो वो भी देना है।
भाइयों और बहनों, 1978 के पहले वन जमीन पर जिन लोगों के अतिक्रमण थे या आज है, ऐसे लोगों की अर्जी लेने के लिए ये ग्राम सभा अपन ने बुलाई है। ये ग्राम सभा में एक ग्राम समिति का भी अपने को गठन करना है।
The salient feature was the three-tier system of village level committee, taluka level committee and appellate committee. The village level committee comprised of Sarpanch, Police Patil, Patwari, Forest Guard and village elders or NGOs representatives nominated by Gram Sabhas. This committee received claims as well as proactively helped to prepare applications after enlisting such encroachers. It examined the documentary as well as circumstantial evidence which necessitated field visits in every case to ascertain factum of possession and subsisting encroachment as per norms. The claims were then settled and recorded before the Gram Sabha, which has special powers under the PISA Act.
आपका नाम क्या है?
लखमाई भैया।
कब से जोत रही है?
बहुत साल से जोत रहा है हमारा।
आपको मालूम है खेती कब से कर रही है?
ये कम से कम एक रुपए वायदा से जब से जोत रही है।
1978 के पहले कही है।
तो इनका दादा नाना से जो
ये तो दंड पाती है 78 के पहले की है। ठीक है, ये पात्र हो सकता है। आपके हिसाब से खेती मिलना चाहिए इनको?
मिलना चाहिए सर, बहुत हाथ जोड़ के मैं बोलता है।
While working in Melghat as a sub-divisional officer, we went to a village called Pili near Simado with a RFO, Mr. Deshmukh, and we found that there were encroachments existing on the field, right in the possession of the people, but they were not recorded in the books of forest officers. The 3-member committee at the village level was formed.
अभी जो स्टेट महाराष्ट्र गवर्नमेंट ने जो डिसीजन लिया और ख़ासतौर से अमरावती में जो डिसाइड हुआ जिस लाइन पे कि अतिक्रमण की प्रॉब्लम कैसे छुड़ाई जाए, ये बात ज़रूर ध्यान में रखनी है साथ में कि जो गवर्नमेंट ने 79 में कमिटमेंट किए हैं उसको भी ऑनर किया जाए और साथ में फॉरेस्ट प्रोटेक्शन, फॉरेस्ट की बर्बादी भी रोकी जाए। ये दोनों को ध्यान में रखते हुए हमको कोई ना कोई युक्ति करनी थी, कोई ना कोई सही तरीका निकालना था और प्रॉब्लम वंस फॉर ऑल हमको समाप्त करनी थी। और अब फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट के अंदर हम लोगों को भी, हमारे सबॉर्डिनेट ऑफिसर्स को फील्ड में जो हैं, जो गार्ड्स, उनको पहले उनका संबंध आता है अतिक्रमण वगैरह से, अब उनको भी ये क्लियर हो जाएगा कि अमुक आदमी जो है, ये आदमी ये पात्र है, इन लोगों के अलावा जितने भी कोई अतिक्रमण दिखेंगे, जहाँ पर भी दिखेंगे, जिस आदमी को दिखेगा वो अपात्र है। अब हमको भी आसानी होगी लॉ एग्जीक्यूट करने में कि हमारे स्टाफ भी यह सहारा नहीं ले सकेगा कि साहब ये पात्रता इसकी निश्चित होने की है, इसलिए अतिक्रमण कर रहा है। नो, थिंग्स आर वेरी वेरी क्लियर, वेल डिफाइंड, कौन अतिक्रमक है और कौन नहीं है। जो नहीं है उनको हम हटा सकते हैं क्योंकि वो उनके लिए गवर्नमेंट का कोई कमिटमेंट नहीं है और वो गैर कानूनी तौर से घुसे हुए हैं, इसलिए उनको निकालने का हमको पूरा हक है।
According to Sitaram Jadav's case, where the Bombay High Court has ruled, it says that the right is created the day that the government order is passed. We are dealing with communities who are fragile communities and for whom the denial of a right will have, it's not a denial of a property right which takes place in a civil court, etc. It's denial of the right to life, and denial of the right to life means denial of a livelihood right and a right to live with dignity. What has happened post that order of the Supreme Court, the Panchayat's extension to the scheduled areas came into being, the role of the Gram Sabha was clarified, the creation of a structure of participatory democracy came into being. Sociologically, there is a way of verifying a period, and the Gram Sabha, in a way, being the best place where evidence can actually be verified. Almost all states, that means tribal movements in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, in Madhya Pradesh, in Chhattisgarh, in Orissa and Andhra Pradesh, are arguing with their state governments and saying that please also pass orders on the following the pattern of the Maharashtra order.
Tribals have an oral tradition where recording in their society does not have much of significance. Therefore, the spoken word itself becomes the law. It is the truth for the tribals. There is a practical aspect also to this problem, that in these remote areas the tribals do not have much of documentary evidence. Therefore, adducing circumstantial evidence by way of field inspections and taking opinion of the village elders regarding the periodicity of encroachment, the factum of possession and subsisting cultivation becomes very crucial by way of the Gram Sabhas. And we have seen that the village communities have gone by the norms. Almost 47% of the claims that were received have been rejected at the village level itself. Thirdly, after the extension of the PISA Act to these areas, the Gram Sabha have become the cardinal point of governance in all matters. Gram Sabhas are also competent to manage their forest, land and water resources at the village level itself. Therefore, when we talk of determination of rights on forest land, consulting people becomes an issue of constitutional right.
While most of the claims were settled at this level, a review committee comprising of Nayab Tehsildar, Range Forest Officer and Circle Inspector heard the appeals and visited the fields in necessary cases to satisfy themselves. A second opportunity to dissatisfied claimants was provided by a committee comprising of Divisional Forest Officer, Assistant Project Officer, Tribal and Sub-Divisional Officer, Revenue, who examined all case papers before submitting their final recommendations. Thus, a final list of encroachers was prepared after preparing the case papers with detail and examining all evidences. People's participation and transparency ensured that only rightful claims qualified for regularization. This list was submitted to Government of India through Forest Department to enable their ownership rights in the said plots. Laminated certificates were given as proof of eligibility to safeguard undue harassment as well as deter further encroachments on the forest land.
It has been seen that this particular process, which was experimented in Amravati, has been found to be a very methodical and systematic exercise, and this has resulted in going through a process of rejecting cases which have not been found eligible and accepting cases which have been considered as eligible on the basis of not only the documents but also the actual condition at the site.
In this particular case study of Amravati district, what used to happen that most of the drivers don't have any evidence that they were cultivating. By introducing this village committee, everybody is involved. My forest department person is involved, Gram Panchayat person is involved, 2 voluntaries, NGOs are involved. So they can really bring forward the evidence to prove that these Adivasis have been cultivating this particular land and they are entitled to get patta for that particular land.
Land is the only source of livelihood for these poor tribals, which also has a direct bearing on their health, nutritional and survival status itself. Therefore, we need to devise policies which take care of the fuel, fodder and food needs. Mere stringent policing will not do in these areas.
हमारा पिताजी ने कई ज़माने से खेती जोत रहा था, वो ज़मीन हमको अभी तक पट्टा नहीं मिला था, फिर हमको ये प्रमाण पत्र मिला। अब आज खेती जोतेंगे, हमारा बाल बच्चे को हम कैसे भी रोजी रोटी खिलाएंगे।
खेती का प्रमाण पत्र घटाए ना लेना अच्छा सब इतना डाय हाले बाल बच्चे के सहायता डाय।
परम पीढ़ी से खेती जोत रहे, आज तक हमको पट्टा नहीं था। अब ये प्रमाण पत्र मिल रहा है, हमारे को कुछ फायदा होंगे, हमारे बाल बच्चे पलेंगे, हम भी पलेंगे।
जमीन होना